but that way you have control of the recording.
Okay.
All right, I will let everybody in.
Good afternoon, Valerie. Thank you for joining us.
Hi there.
Hello. As you're joining us in the chat, there's a brief message. I encourage people to drop something in our chat that if you participated in our first session, just something that you remember, something that caught your ear, or if you were unable to join us at that time, maybe something that you are currently engaging in, a practice that is helping to increase attendance for you. If you'd like to share something, that would be grand. Thank you for joining us on this very warm afternoon. I always chuckle when I start thinking that 35 degrees is warm. That makes me a little nervous, but. Hello. If you've not had a chance to review the attendance toolkit yet, I also put the link for that in our chat if you want to kind of download that or take a look at it as we're traveling through. We'll wait a few minutes while people start to continue to join us. I see people using the data tracking docs. Excellent. Bear, do you want to take care of that? Can you see that message? No. Okay.
Probably just directly to you.
All right. Yeah, the tracking sheets. Some people are asking if the first session was recorded. It is. And people that reached out, I was able to send a document that had the recording as well as all of the different links that we received from Jess Anderson. It ultimately will be housed on our attendance page. Bear, if you were able to send the link directly to Andrea Logan, she's having a challenging time locating that. Thank you for joining us, Jeanette. Thank you. So people are dropping in the chat just things that they are practices that they're actively engaging in that are increasing attendance for them, or something that they remember from the very first session that we had, something that just caught your ear. Oh, the self-assessments. Yes. I'd be curious to see how that went for you. That's a phenomenal tool to be using, Henry. All right. Let's just give it one more minute while people continue to join us. Oh, Julia, I love that idea. Although teachers are so incredibly busy, I love the idea of teachers actually being the ones to make the contact with students, really thinking about the connections and building on relationships. School assessment teams. Whew. One of the things that we have learned is this definitely is not a one-person business. This is definitely meant for a team. Excellent. Data trackers, data trackers, data. Loving it. All right, well, I'd like to get started, and people will be joining us as they can, but I want to introduce myself. I am Sarah Nelson. I'll talk a little bit more about my role at the Maine Department of Education a little bit later.
Sarah, do you want to start the recording too?
I thought I had.
Oh, perfect.
There should have been an indicator for people that it was being recorded.
I see it.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Double checking.
Thank you. I need those double checks, Bear. You know that. So the premise behind the Attendance Toolkit webinar is that this really is an overarching, just kind of an introduction to the Maine Department of Education toolkit, Attendance Toolkit, And our idea was to provide subject area content, resources, and strategies to help school staff understand how attendance can impact a variety of health factors for your school community. Thinking about school climate, family engagement, community involvement. To further empower schools and educators, the Maine Department of Education decided to launch a 4-part series to deeply explore portions of the Maine Department of Education Attendance Toolkit. We have been dipping our toe in specific sections of the toolkit and examining those resources and strategies designed to truly increase student attendance, thinking about evidence-based practices. Each session features a content expert. This week we have 2 content experts I'll shortly be introducing you to, who will be offering a unique opportunity to share practices that they have seen in schools. Our hope is that you might hear something and think, my gosh, I could try that in our school. That might even work in my classroom. So we have some commentary from people that are truly in the trenches. Our first session focused on the basics of the toolkit, and we were joined by Jess Anderson. This week, we will be looking at school climate and student supports. So thinking about the fact that this series is designed to provide targeted guidance for schools, ensuring the tools and strategies are integrated effectively into systems to address attendance challenges. The agenda for today, we're going to start off just thank you for those people that were able to drop some ideas in the chat, things that are working for you currently in your role. Moving on, we are going to have some really quick introductions. And then we will have an opportunity to hear from each of our experts, and then we will break into small breakout groups with some very specific questions to think about. We'll have a conversation, then we'll come back together, we'll share. One of the things that's very nice is that you, if you so choose, will receive a document at the end that has all of these resources. So it might be an opportunity for you just to listen. Don't worry about writing down every link. Those will be provided a little bit later on. So I'd like to introduce myself. I am Sarah Nelson. I've worked with members of the Office of School and Student Supports for the past 9 months, actively collaborating in my role as a student engagement specialist. I arrange professional development interactions with school personnel and community representatives statewide. I assist schools with implementation of student engagement practices. We're really thinking about how we can support whole student, whole educator practices. We are currently supporting that through BAR, which is our Building Assets, Reducing Risk, and the Regulated Classroom, 2 different opportunities that we've been highly promoting. We assist with integration of evidence-based engagement practices that align with Maine state and district strategic plans. And most recently, I've joined with many throughout the state to place a spotlight on efforts for increased attendance. So lots of hats being worn over there for me. I'd like to start now by introducing our expert, Courtney Angelosante. She is the PBIS Initiative Coordinator with the College of Education and Human Development at the University of Maine. Courtney is a board-certified behavior analyst with experience teaching elementary education and special education. Before joining the faculty at UMaine, she spent years, many of you probably had an opportunity to work with her as a district-level behavior consultant. Her continued practice and research interests include challenging behaviors, inclusive education, and positive behavior intervention and supports. She is the coordinator for PBIS within the State Department of Education and represents Maine in the Northeast Advisory Group for PBIS. Currently, she has strong partnerships with over 65 Maine schools, providing training and technical assistance. She's a member of several regional and national organizations related to school-wide climate and behavior. So with that, I would love to introduce Courtney as she shares with you about school climate, the why, the resources, strategies, and stories of implementation success. Courtney, are you all set?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction and hello everyone. It's nice to be here. There's some new faces on the screen, but some familiar ones as well. I'd like to also give a shout out to Karen Robbie. She's like my counterpart and my co-trainer for a lot of this work. And so invite her to enter into the chat or to try to answer questions in real time too, if those pop up for you in regards to PBIS. But I was asked to join this webinar today to talk about school climate, and really happy and eager to do so because I'm pretty passionate about the topic. What I've done is I've taken the attendance toolkit and I've unpacked it a little bit. Instead of giving you a ton of text on the page or or referencing it, I decided to pair a little bit of commentary, resources, tools, in some slides for you. So that's what I'm going to do. The other thing that I'll call out is I have attached links to this. And so before we wrap up today, I will share this slide deck in the chat with everyone. So you'll have all of the direct links if that's helpful for you. Okay, so first is the question, why does school climate matter? And why are we talking about school climate when we're talking about attendance? Well, what we know is students are more likely to come to school if they feel safe, both physically and emotionally. We would like to promote the use of data for decision making, for knowing your context, right? So many times we're doing things for kids without input from kids or even an understanding of their perceptions of school. And there's been some strides in the past decade in terms of understanding how do our kids feel and why does it matter. So on the screen here, you see reference the Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey. This survey is so comprehensive and informative, and you can find this data by county and across age levels as well. Within PBIS, we also do an additional school climate survey, and I'll get to some of those resources in just a bit. But the idea here is to make sure that we're asking the question of how do you feel about school? And when you can unpack that by grade level, we should be looking at how do our students feel for sure. We should also be asking how do our staff feel and how do our families feel about sending their most treasured human beings into our care for the day. So it's a big deal. One of the things that we're going to talk about is greeting students warmly, addressing bullying and bias, and then teaching behavior, just like you would teach academic skills. The resources as they're laid out in the attendance toolkit look like this, and I'm going to do some touch points on what happens when you click on each of those links. So for strategies in terms of greeting students at the door, it is now considered to be an evidence-based practice. And I've pulled a brief sort of a how-to of the practice, positive greetings at the door. And it breaks down, just what it is, the rationale for doing it, and then how to do it with some tips and tricks. You're going to see the QR code on the screen that'll get you right to that page at the website as well. And I also have linked it in the slides. But this one is one of those things, right? When we talk about systems change, about creating cultures of care that are promoting the positive behaviors, we tend to talk about this in terms of a comprehensive systems approach that can take 3 to 5 years to really get in the bricks of how we do school, interact with each other, with our students and their families. But this is a practice that you can learn about today and implement tomorrow, which is why I love that it's included in the toolkit. And it is just what it says. It's making that 2-minute start to your day intentional, that it matters that we have this connection, that I see you, I notice you, I acknowledge you, and some type of an exchange that sends this message that you belong here and we would miss you if you weren't here. And so there's much more in terms of links and connections, but feel free to keep this one really simple. It's about making sure that our priority for the day is being right there when they come in, taking a good look at them, calling them by their name, and having a touch point in a positive way to start the day. We also need to talk about addressing bullying and bias. And when you click on the link in the toolkit, it'll get you to this page in the DOE's website that's called Bullying Prevention. And in here is packed with information from reporting to laws to data, and then some resources for schools to consider to support that teaching and implementation of a prevention framework. I've also up there in the corner, I have included bully prevention within PBIS. It is evidence-based curriculum, and I've attached that picture there is for elementary schools, but there's one for older students as well. To me, I'm not going to get lost on which curriculum that you choose. One of the things, though, that I think is really important for your school to be considering, or to have you do this sort of this mental checklist, if you will, is, does everyone know their role, right? So if it happens to a student, does the student know what to do? If a bystander is watching this unfold, does that bystander know what to do? And when communicated with, does the person perpetuating that behavior understand and can read the signs to stop? We also want to make sure that that parents have a pipeline for connecting and talking through their concerns in a way that is bidirectional and supportive, and that things are happening in a timely way. Not that we have to have results immediately, but that people are communicated with in a time, in a manner that's dignified and oriented towards problem solving. Website, again, is filled with all kinds of resources. But the idea that we have something in place that isn't just about reporting and data collection, but it's really about teaching and teaching their roles. There's also a segment in the toolkit talking about restorative practices. Stacy Barlow is the very hardworking person behind the scenes of restorative practices at the department, really knowledgeable, hardworking, and on the road into schools across the state. The idea here, though, is that we're building skills. Staff are learning skills then to pass on to their students in ways that we're fostering trust, building relationships, improving communication, and identifying and applying consistent responses to sometimes what is very typical student behavior. And so much more available here, and on the website too. You can get a program description and resources and scope and sequence for engaging with the work that Stacy's leading, but also resources just for learning more about restorative practices. Now, when we talk about multi-tiered systems of support, or PBIS or MTSS, or and whatever terminology you're using to unpack this idea of multi-tiered logic, we talk about this being something that we need to include the word sustainable and systems change. This isn't overnight work. And so when you're talking about what should we do to address attendance in your school or your district, you really want to be thinking about, what does systems change look like? And so there's time to be spent here in exploration, and then identifying practices and curriculum supports for your staff and students and families that's a good fit for your school and your community. And then we're working hard to implement those things to a point where it's just part of what you do. And one thing that's exciting for me is I'm going to share a little story here about a school that has made the commitment to really moving in practices to meet their context needs, but doing so in a way that they are implementing with fidelity through all kinds of systems components, teaming, meeting, using data for decision-making, and with a focus on teaching skills to students, which means teachers are orienting their practices around responding to behaviors, attendance being one of them, in a way that's instructional. So exciting here, when we talk about school climate, I wanted to share some results as we have been digging into the data very recently, is our schools that we're working with use a school climate survey within PBIS, but it's available for anyone. It's also linked in the slide deck that I'll be sharing. And overall, the school the climate survey that went out to students, we have seen a 6.5 increase in reports of favorable school climate by students. In particular, to the question of I feel safe at school, that question rose over 14%, which we think is a pretty big deal over 3 years. We've also seen the climate survey for staff increase 14.7% in that same time frame. And the climate survey, particularly the question around safety, feeling that school is a safe place to send their children, families are reporting a nearly 11% increase in school climate, and we think that's a pretty big deal. So how does this impact or relate or correlate, I should say more accurately, to chronic absenteeism? Now with COVID, it's a little, you have to factor in the COVID factor here, but we did see a drop in chronic absenteeism by 4% down to 13%, which is pretty excellent. There's other data that's really impressive here. I tried to keep it strict to school climate for the purpose of today's webinar, but there's other related factors that we're pretty psyched about. One of them being suspension down for the number of students by 45%, and Chapter 33 incidents coming down to just about 0. So lots of good things happen when you decide to make a change, create leadership teams, adopt practices, pay attention to fidelity, and then sustain those practices over time. So I don't know how I'm doing on time, but
That has been a plethora of knowledge. I think I could listen to your knowledge for hours. I thank you, thank you, thank you. One of the challenges of this webinar is it's a super quick time frame, but I'm hoping what's happening is, even though we didn't get as much as we would love to have had more time with you, hopefully people are like, oh, I know I'm going to be checking this out. So thank you, Courtney. Outstanding opportunity for you to share some insight to us. I think now we're going to switch, and we're gonna learn a little bit more about the school supports that are highlighted. Thank you so much. We're going to switch to our content expert, Signe Lynch, and Signe will be talking again, as I said, about student supports. So Signe serves in the Office of School and Student Supports and is a member of the Climate, Culture, and Resilience team. Her expertise lies in offering supports to schools and families in the provisions of McKinney-Vento, the Education of Homeless Children and Youth program, and implementing the preventing student homelessness pilot program in Maine's SAUs. You will often hear Signe posing the question, do you know students whose education is impacted by their housing situation? Sometimes this might include sharing housing, doubling up, couch surfing, staying in motels. Hopefully, you're probably thinking about people right now. Hotels, shelters, trailers, campgrounds, emergency or transitional housing, cars, parks, public spaces, or substandard housing. Well, as a specialist focused on identifying opportunities for supporting the needs of highly mobile students, Signe can then help you make connections with valuable resources. And with that, I am going to pass to Signe. Are you all set, Signe?
I am all set. Hello, everyone. And I don't have the same beautiful slides that Courtney was able to supply for you, but I am going to share my screen so you are able to see this page of the attendance toolkit so that we can walk through this together. Are you all able to see my screen now?
Yes.
Awesome. Excellent. All right. So like Sarah said, I am the McKinney-Vento Homeless Education Specialist in the Office of School and Student Support. So very fitting to be providing some overview of the student support page of the toolkit here today. And so when we think about student supports, we're thinking about children who may be missing school due to family instability. And so that family instability might look like highly mobile students. So that could be a student that is experiencing homelessness. And I'm just going to zoom in my screen. Is this helpful? Is it easier to see it when it's
Yes.
zoomed in a little bit more? Okay.
Looking really good. Thank you.
Oh, maybe too much. I'm backing it up. Okay. So when we think about family instability and particularly highly mobile students, that might be a student that is experiencing homelessness. It could also be a family that is involved in the child welfare system. So for example, foster care students that you're working with, so students that are in the custody of DHHS. It could also be students that may be migrant students, so students that are traveling with their families for agricultural work, fishery work. We're also thinking about students that might be having some mental health challenges or social emotional concerns. So these are various student demographics that may need some additional support to be able to make it to school every day and know that they are a valued part of their school community. And so I think first, as the McKinney-Vento specialist, I will speak to the great resources that we have available on the Maine DOE McKinney-Vento education page. And for those, I know there's a lot of familiar faces in here, but for those that are a little bit new to McKinney-Vento, when we talk about homelessness in education, I always like to note that we use the most flexible definition of homeless across. So there's no federal or state alignment on the definition of homelessness through the various agencies. So for example, Housing and Urban Development are going to use a different definition of homelessness compared to what we use in education. And the reason for that is that we're looking at making sure we identify and provide appropriate supports to any student that's facing housing instability so that they have the resources that they need to be able to get to school every day and have the option for school stability if their housing situation is having them move around frequently. So the definition that we use is students that are lacking a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. So those are the three key words that we think about when we qualify a student for McKinney-Vento, is fixed, regular, and adequate. And the big piece about this, so McKinney-Vento, or the Education of Homeless Children and Youth program, is federal law, federal statute. And one of the key things that it does require for all of our public school systems, so every SAU in Maine does have to have a McKinney-Vento liaison designated. So that person's going to be your point of contact if you are working with a student that is facing housing instability. This is a really important thing for when we talk about the screening pieces and strategies that we use for making sure that students are able to make it to school every day. We really encourage having a enrollment questionnaire in all of enrollment packets about housing situations that students are in, and also making sure that all of your school staff are aware of students, what to look for if students may qualify for McKinney-Vento. So we have on our website a McKinney-Vento liaison lookup tool. So if you are school staff and you don't know who your McKinney-Vento liaison is, please check out this contact lookup page on our McKinney-Vento DOE website. You can type in any town in the state of Maine and it will tell you who the person is, your liaison for your school district. One of the other things that you'll see on this McKinney-Vento website is all of these different forms and templates that can be used for working with students that are experiencing housing instability. I really encourage schools to reach out and use some of the sample forms. One of the ones that is a great check-in form that also I would say can be adapted to the various students that you're working with that fall into the student support category. So if you're working with a student that might have some mental health challenges, they're dealing with severe anxiety, for example, really thinking about what are the things that you like about school? How can we get you here every day? And really having those conversations with those individual students and those families, right? Let's figure out what you like about school and how we can wrap that into your school day every day and make sure that you make it here. So there's a ton of resources, and one of the things, so we have screener forms that are available for the enrollment piece for identifying students, and the emphasis I have on McKinney-Vento and particularly highly mobile students in this page is because migrant students, McKinney-Vento homeless students, and foster care students have some of the highest rates of chronic absenteeism in the state. So for example, for the 23-24 school year, we had the highest rate of McKinney-Vento students identified. So that was 5,200 students in Maine across at some point during the school year experienced homelessness. So that's about 3% of our student population. And of that 3% of the student population, of those students experiencing homelessness, almost 50% of them experience chronic absenteeism along with that. So this is a really important demographic to think about when we think about engaging and making sure that these students can get to school each day. Same for foster care and other highly mobile populations. One of the big things in this is also for all of the students, if you're working with someone that is having some of these mental health challenges that might be making it difficult for them to show up every day, is those interviews that you conduct. So there is that fantastic resource that is available, that is the attendance support plan. And this is a great resource to have for working with anyone that's going to need a more individualized approach to getting to school each day. So thinking about those strengths and connections, student and family challenges. One thing I will say that comes up a lot, particularly when we're talking about highly mobile families and low income families, is that if a student becomes chronically absent, so you haven't seen a student for a week or two in a row, and you start doing that outreach to the family, and you hit dead ends because the family, either the cell phone that they have listed on their contact page has been turned off. Who has had that experience before where you cannot get a hold of a family, right? So their cell phone has been turned off or something like that. A home visit happens. Maybe they're not at that address anymore. That happens a lot with our McKinney-Vento students because they are highly mobile, but low income families too that might be able to not able to afford their cell phone bills, for example. A great way that schools have worked to address this is setting up for their social work team, for their McKinney-Vento teams, having a Facebook page set up and using Facebook Messenger and adding those families, so that that's a great way to keep contact, because oftentimes families are going to have access to a device. They just might not be able to afford the service for it. So the phone number might be changing, and you want to make sure that you have a reliable source of communication with every family, right? So that's a great avenue to go of looking at alternative ways to stay in contact consistently with a family who might be highly mobile, who may be low income, who may be struggling to maintain consistent forms of communication, looking at alternative ways. One of the other pieces that is important to highlight here is the National Alliance of Mental Illness and their Maine mental health first aid. So you can always visit their website. They have ongoing trainings. They work with schools and community-based organizations all the time. And this is really building staff awareness, right? Of what are the signs that we should be looking for that a student might be struggling. We want to be ahead of things before they start to happen. We start missing students, right? And so much of this is the identification of a student that might need support. But then what do you do when you identify a student that needs support? Where do you go from there? And what I really like to say for all of the families and schools that I work with is the awareness of the community resources around you. And so that really comes down, we have a great resource here, Access Maine, and this will take you to Access Maine's website, which has an abundance of resources that are available in Maine for any family. So it could be mental health resources, right? But it could be food assistance, housing assistance, and all of those other pieces that go along to providing some wraparound support to encourage a family and to make sure that their student is getting to school every day. Another piece about that resource awareness in a community is I wanted to draw your attention to the Be There For Me, which is another great online resource. And this is a website that was designed by DHHS in collaboration with families that wanted to make sure there's an accessible resource. So this is designed specifically for parents and caregivers. So you can go on this site and it'll help you with all of these different things that you might be struggling with as a parent, right? And the thing I really love about this page is that they translated it into the 11 most common spoken languages in Maine. So this is a great resource to share with families because it has the translation services available too, and it's user friendly. That is the goal, is that you can provide this as a resource to a family so they can do some outreach as well. One of the last things, I know we're working with super limited time, so I just want to say that one of the last things that I will say from my work with McKinney-Vento and schools, the schools that are most successful in bringing the bringing resources to the table and encouraging that attendance, regular attendance, are the schools that are able to establish those relationships with community partners. Don't do this work alone. There are community-based organizations, there are community resources available. So making sure you're referring families and students to appropriate resources, but no, you're not doing this work alone, and establishing those other connections with community providers so that you're not alone in this work. Families are not alone. You can build that trust and make sure that you're also not exhausting yourself, because there are other supports available. So that's really my last message to everyone, is that community resource and making sure you're aware of what's available and connecting with them.
Signe, did you say that was BeThereForMe.org?
Yep, BeThereForMe.org. I'll put it in the chat right now.
Fantastic. And another resource that I know that you work with is through Place Matters Maine, the Maine Regional Care Teams. And I will drop that resource in our in our document that people will receive as a follow-up. That's another great resource.
A great resource for older youth. Yep.
Yeah, that's a little bit older. Like I think is it high school, or is exclusively high school for the regional care teams?
12 forward.
Age 12 forward. Okay.
Yeah.
And Be There For Me is all ages?
All ages, for any parent or caregiver.
Thank you. I love your knowledge. All right. So guys, typically what we do at this time is we move into breakout groups, and time is always, our enemy. But what I'd love to do is I'm going to switch things up just a little bit, and I'm going to give people an opportunity to decide what they would like to talk about in a group. We will have an abbreviated opportunity to come together. The first question would be, what steps has your school taken to create a positive school climate? Or perhaps you would rather discuss, how is your team identifying and accessing resources for children who are missing school due to family instability, mental health issues, and social emotional concerns? The truth is, I'm going to be honest with you guys here. Sometimes when I used to go into breakout rooms, I was like, oh my gosh, what are they going to have me talk about? Blah, 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 blah. But then I started realizing the experts are all around us. And I started learning so many things from the people that were in the rooms with me. So I'm going to give you that as just a reminder that I love it when you share what you know. And when we come together, let's go for let's just make it a real quick 10 minutes. When we come back together, I'm going to ask you to just briefly summarize one step your team or you can take to create a positive school culture or access student supports. The reason I'm asking you to do that is because I will then take all that information and put it in our document so people can go back and look at that. So I am going to give you the opportunity to start joining. I broke you into groups, and I think we'll come back at 4:22. How's that sound? Thanks, guys. It looks like everyone is in now. Oh man, the frantic pace. I have to tell you, this is not my agenda, and I feel like Courtney, you are muted, hon.
Yeah, I would pause your recording while they're in breakout.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.